The call came at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, jolting me awake in my Manhattan apartment. I fumbled for my phone, squinting at the unfamiliar number with my hometown's area code. It had been 15 years since I'd saved any number from that place. Zoe? My mother's voice cracked through the speaker, and I felt my entire body tense. Margaret Chen hadn't called me in over a decade. Not for my college graduation. Not when I got promoted to creative director at one of New York's top advertising agencies. Not even when my son was born. Mom, the word felt foreign on my tongue. Your father's in the hospital. He had a heart attack. You need to come home. Home. She said it like I still belonged there. Like they hadn't made it crystal clear that I was nothing more than a bank account to them. But something in her voice, a tremor of genuine fear, made me book the first flight out. As I packed hastily in the dark, memories flooded back. Growing up, I'd been the golden child. Straight A's, violin competitions, science fairs. I collected achievements like other kids collected baseball cards. My parents, Chinese immigrants who'd built their lives from nothing, beamed with pride at every parent-teacher conference. Our Zoe will be a doctor, they'd tell anyone who'd listen. Then Emily came along when I was 10, my baby sister, with her dimpled cheeks and infectious laugh. At first, I adored her. I'd rush home from school to help feed her, read her stories, teach her everything I knew. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Emily wasn't interested in academics. She was charming, vivacious, the kind of person who lit up every room she entered. While I spent Friday nights studying for the SATs, she was the homecoming queen. While I stressed over college applications, she was planning fashion shows in our garage. And slowly, gradually, my parents' attention shifted too. Emily needs more support, they'd say when they missed my debate tournament to attend her dance recital. You're so independent, Zoe. You don't need us hovering. By the time I left for MIT on a full scholarship, I'd learned to swallow the hurt, to smile when they forgot my birthday but threw Emily elaborate parties, to nod when they suggested I take out loans for my textbooks because Emily needed new equipment for her latest hobby. The hospital smelled exactly like every hospital, that mixture of disinfectant and despair that clings to your clothes. I found my father in the cardiac unit, looking smaller than I remembered, tubes and wires connecting him to beeping machines. My mother sat beside him, and when she looked up, I saw she'd aged 20 years in the 15 since I'd seen her. Zoe. She didn't hug me. We'd never been a hugging family, but the distance between us felt like an ocean. How is he? I asked, setting down my bag. Stable. The doctors say he'll recover, but... She trailed off, her fingers twisting the hem of her sweater. There are complications. Of course there were. There always were when my family called. Dad's eyes fluttered open, focusing on me with difficulty. Zoe, you came? Of course I came, Dad. I took his hand, surprised by how fragile it felt. We sat in awkward silence until Emily burst through the door 2 hours later, all designer handbag and perfectly blown out hair, despite the supposed family crisis. Oh my God, Daddy! She rushed to his other side, immediately commanding the room's attention. I'm so sorry I'm late. I had to arrange coverage at the boutique. The boutique. Her latest venture, no doubt funded by our parents' retirement savings. She finally noticed me. Zoe, wow, you actually came. He's my father too, Emily. She smiled that practiced smile I remembered so well. Of course, it's just been so long, we weren't sure you still considered yourself part of this family. The barb hit exactly where she intended. I'd left, yes, but I'd been pushed out long before I physically walked away. Every college break when I came home to find my room converted to Emily's walk-in closet. Every family dinner where my accomplishments were brushed aside to discuss Emily's latest drama. Every time they asked me to lend money I knew I'd never see again. How's the boutique? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Her smile faltered for just a second. It's going through a transition. The fashion industry is so volatile right now. Mom and Dad exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. We fell into an uneasy routine over the next few days. I worked remotely from my childhood home, or what used to be my home. The house felt different now, smaller somehow, and there were subtle signs of decline I hadn't expected. Peeling paint on the shutters, a leak stain on the dining room ceiling, appliances that should have been replaced years ago. I was in the kitchen making coffee when Mom finally approached me about what I'd been waiting for. Zoe, we need to talk about the house. Here it comes. I stirred my coffee slowly, not turning around. What about it? We're going to lose it. Now I turned. What do you mean? She sank into a kitchen chair, suddenly looking every one of her 70 years. Emily's boutique. It didn't just fail. She took out loans. Big ones. And we co-signed. You put the house up as collateral? I couldn't hide my disbelief. She was so sure it would work. She had such beautiful plans, a business proposal. Mom's voice broke. The payment is due in 2 weeks. $150,000. Or they foreclose. I set down my mug carefully, afraid I might throw it otherwise. And where's Emily's responsibility in this? She doesn't have it. She declared bankruptcy last month. Her credit is ruined. She's staying in the pool house because she lost her apartment. The pool house. Of course she was. Still sheltered, still protected, while our parents faced homelessness. What about your savings? Dad's 401 Kelvin? Gone. We invested everything in Emily's dreams. Mom looked up at me then, and I saw it in her eyes. The expectation, the assumption. You're doing so well in New York. That big promotion you posted about on LinkedIn. Zoe, you're our only hope. I wanted to laugh, or cry, or scream. The daughter they'd forgotten, the one whose calls they didn't return, whose achievements they'd dismissed. Now I was their only hope. I need to think about it, I said, walking out before I said something I couldn't take back. That evening, I sat in what used to be my room, now a generic guest space with no trace of the girl who'd lived there for 18 years. I called my husband, Marcus, needing to hear a voice that didn't make me feel like I was losing my mind. They want $150,000, I told him after explaining the situation. Jesus, Zoe, after everything they put you through? Marcus knew the stories. How they'd missed my college graduation because Emily had a minor surgery. How they'd asked me not to come home for Christmas one year because Emily was going through something and needed space. How they'd never once visited me in New York, never met their grandson until he was 3, and only then because we'd flown to them. He's still my father, I said weakly. And you're still their daughter. When did that ever matter to them? He was right, but it didn't make the decision easier. I had the money. My career had exploded in the last 5 years. I'd led campaigns for Fortune 500 companies, won industry awards, built a reputation that commanded respect and a salary to match. We lived comfortably, had savings, could afford this. But should I? I heard Emily's laugh from downstairs, followed by the sound of our mother fussing over her. Even now, even after Emily had destroyed their futures, she was being comforted while I sat alone in a room stripped of my existence. I made my decision then, but it wasn't the one anyone expected. The next morning, I called my lawyer, then my financial advisor, then a real estate agent I found online. By noon, I had a plan. I found my mother in the living room, sorting through photo albums. I noticed how few contained pictures of me after Emily turned 5. I'll help, I said, and watched relief flood her face. But on my terms, of course, anything. I'm not giving you the money, I'm buying the house. She blinked, confused. What? I'll purchase it from you for market value, which will cover the debt and leave you with enough to rent somewhere comfortable. The house stays in the family, just under my name. You and Dad can live here as long as you need, paying me a nominal rent. But this is our home. That you were about to lose, I reminded her. This way you're protected. The house is safe, but make no mistake, it will be mine. The explosion came at dinner, as I knew it would. You're stealing our house? Emily shrieked, her face red with indignation. I'm saving it, I corrected, cutting my chicken with deliberate calm. Something you should have thought about before taking out loans you couldn't repay. This is so typical of you, Zoe. Always having to be the hero, the smart one, the successful one, as opposed to the one who bankrupted our parents. She stood up so fast her chair toppled backward. At least I tried to follow my dreams. At least I didn't abandon my family. Abandon? Now I stood too. I was pushed out. Every single time I came home, you made it clear I didn't belong. My room became your closet. My birthday was forgotten while yours was celebrated. My achievements were dismissed while your failures were cushioned. Girls, please, Dad said weakly from his spot at the table, still recovering but insisting on joining family dinners. You were always jealous of me, Emily spat, because I had personality, because people liked me, because I didn't have to prove myself with grades and awards, and because you were loved unconditionally while I had to earn scraps of attention. The words exploded out of me. Years of hurt finally given voice. Do you know what it's like to get into MIT and have your parents say, "That's nice, dear," while planning your sister's sweet 16? To graduate summa cum laude and eat dinner alone because Emily had a breakup and needed support? You got everything, Emily screamed. The brains, the success, the perfect life in New York. I earned everything. While you got handout after handout, I worked 18-hour days. While you played boutique owner with Mom and Dad's retirement, I built a career from nothing. And now, when your choices have consequences, you expect what? For me to hand over my hard-earned money with no strings attached? To save you all again while getting nothing in return? Family doesn't put strings on help, Mom said quietly, but there was no conviction in it. Family doesn't only call when they need money either, I shot back. The silence that followed was deafening. The paperwork was signed within a week. My parents were relieved, even if the dynamics had shifted uncomfortably. Emily, however, went nuclear in a way I should have anticipated but didn't. I found out through a colleague who sent me a screenshot with, "Is this your sister?" attached. Emily had taken to Facebook, crafting a narrative that painted me as the villain in a family drama worthy of a soap opera. According to her post, which had already been shared dozens of times, I was a heartless sister who swooped in to steal my elderly parents' home while they were vulnerable. She claimed I'd manipulated them while our father was hospitalized, that I'd threatened to let them go homeless unless they signed everything over to me. The comments were brutal. People who didn't know me, didn't know the situation, were calling me names I won't repeat. Someone had found my company's page and was leaving reviews about how they shouldn't trust someone who would rob their own family. But the worst part, the part that made my blood boil, was when she brought up my son. She won't even let her own parents see their grandson, Emily had written. She's kept him away for years, using him as a weapon. What kind of mother does that? I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. My son James, who they'd never asked about, who'd never received a birthday card or a phone call from his grandparents, who I'd had to explain to why Grandma and Grandpa never visited like his friends' grandparents did. Marcus found me crying angry tears at my laptop. "I'm calling our lawyer," he said after reading the posts. "This is defamation. She's my sister." "No," he said firmly. "A sister wouldn't do this. This is a stranger trying to destroy your reputation because she's facing consequences for the first time in her life." He was right. The Emily I'd protected as a child, the one I'd loved despite everything, wouldn't have done this. Or maybe she would have, and I'd just been too blind to see who she really was. The cease and desist letter was delivered to Emily 3 days later. My lawyer had also contacted Facebook about the defamatory posts and begun documenting the damage to my professional reputation. 2 clients had called asking about the situation, and while I'd managed to maintain those relationships, the potential damage was clear. I was in my childhood home's kitchen, working on my laptop, when Emily stormed in. "You're suing me?" She waved the letter in my face. "I'm protecting myself from your lies." "Lies? Everything I wrote was true." "Really? When did I threaten Mom and Dad? When did I manipulate them? Show me the receipts, Emily." "You bought their house out from under them. I saved their house from foreclosure that you caused." I stood up, done with staying calm. "You took out loans you couldn't repay, used their home as collateral, and when it all came crashing down, you hid in the pool house while they faced homelessness. I offered a solution that kept a roof over their heads. And you're mad because what? Because for once, your mess has consequences?" "You've always been jealous of me," she said, but it sounded hollow now, like she was reading from a script she'd worn out. "No, Emily, I've always been invisible to you. There's a difference." She raised her hand, and for a moment, I thought she might actually hit me. Instead, she swept my laptop off the counter. It crashed to the floor, the screen cracking. "That's coming out of the rent Mom and Dad pay," I said calmly, though my heart was racing. "And you're no longer welcome in my house." "Your house," she said bitterly. "You just had to rub it in. Get out." Mom appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. "Zoe, she's your sister. She's family. Family doesn't destroy each other for Facebook likes, Mom." She made her choice. The next few days were tense. Emily had moved in with a friend, but not before making sure everyone knew she'd been kicked out of her childhood home by her cruel sister. The narrative was exhausting, but I stopped trying to correct it. People who mattered knew the truth. Dad was getting stronger, and one evening, he asked to speak with me alone. We sat on the porch, watching the sunset I'd forgotten could be so beautiful here. "I failed you," he said quietly. No preamble. I didn't respond, not trusting my voice. "When Emily was born, she was so small, so fragile. You were so strong, so capable. We thought you didn't need us as much. As President Raiders, that was called. I was 10, Dad. I needed you. I know. I see that now. We leaned on you, expected too much, and gave too little in return. And when you left," he paused, gathering himself. "We told ourselves you didn't want us anymore. It was easier than admitting we'd driven you away. Why didn't you call, visit, anything? Pride, shame. Emily always needed something, and there was never enough left over. We told ourselves you were better off without our problems. I would have helped. I always helped when you asked. That's the problem, isn't it? We only asked when we needed something." We sat in silence as the sun dipped below the horizon. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. "I want to know my grandson," he said finally. "If you'll let me, let us. That depends on Mom, and on whether you both can respect that Emily is not welcome around my son until she takes accountability for her actions." He nodded slowly. "Your mother, she's coming around." Seeing Emily's behavior these past weeks, the lies online, the broken laptop, it's opened her eyes. And Emily? Emily is who we made her to be. That's our fault, not yours. The confrontation with Emily came 2 weeks later, at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. She'd asked to meet through Mom, claiming she wanted to apologize. I didn't believe it, but I went anyway, prepared for anything. She looked different, tired maybe, or just without her usual perfect presentation. Her roots were showing, her nails weren't done. For the first time in years, she looked human. "I'm not apologizing," she started, which at least was honest. "Then why am I here?" "Because I want you to understand something." She leaned forward, her eyes intense. "You got out. You left. You built this perfect life while I stayed here, drowning in their expectations." "Their expectations? Emily, they gave you everything. They gave me everything because I was never good enough without it." Her voice cracked. "You don't get it, do you? You were the smart one, the talented one, the one with the bright future. I was just pretty. Charming. So they threw money at me, hoping something would stick, hoping I'd find my thing. But nothing was ever enough because I wasn't you." I stared at her, genuinely shocked. "That's revisionist history and you know it. Is it? Every report card, every recital, every boyfriend, Mom would say Zoe would have done better. They never said it to you, but I heard it constantly. Zoe wouldn't have failed that test. Zoe wouldn't have quit piano. Zoe wouldn't have needed 3 tries to get her driver's license. So you decided to destroy my reputation online?" I was angry. I'm still angry. "You swooped in with your money and your success and fixed everything, just like they always said you would. And I'm still the failure, but now I'm the failure who lost them their house too. You want me to feel sorry for you? No. I want you to understand that we were both victims of their inability to parent 2 different children. They failed you by pushing you away, and they failed me by never letting me fail. The difference is, I didn't bankrupt them." She laughed bitterly. "No, you just bought them. I saved them. From your mess. My mess that they enabled every step of the way." We stared at each other across the table, years of resentment and misunderstanding between us. Then she stood up. "I'm leaving," she announced. "Moving to Austin. A friend has a startup, offered me a marketing position. A real job, not funded by Mom and Dad. Good for you." She turned to go, then stopped. "The Facebook posts, I'll take them down. Tell your lawyer to back off." "Already done. They were removed last week." "Of course they were. You always were thorough." As she walked toward the door, I called out, "Emily." She turned. "It didn't have to be this way. We could have been actual sisters. No, she said sadly. We couldn't. They made sure of that, and then she was gone. It was the last time I'd see her. 6 months have passed since that day in the coffee shop. The house, my house, has been renovated with the care it deserved. The leak is fixed, the shutters painted, the appliances updated. Mom and Dad live there still, paying a rent that goes directly into an account for James's college fund. The dynamics have shifted dramatically. Without Emily as a buffer, my parents have had to actually see me. More importantly, they've had to see themselves. Mom called me crying one night, apologizing for years of neglect, for choosing favorites, for failing me as a mother. Dad has been in therapy, working through his own issues about success and failure and what he projected onto his daughters. James visits them once a month now. He's building a relationship with grandparents who are trying to do better, be better. They remember his birthday, call him weekly, and have learned to respect my boundaries about not discussing Emily around him. Emily, true to her word, moved to Austin. She blocked me on all social media, and I heard through Mom that she's doing well. The job is real. She's in therapy too, and she's learning to stand on her own feet for the first time in her life. I hope she finds peace. I hope she finds herself. My relationship with my parents will never be what it could have been. Too much damage was done, too many years were lost. But we're building something new on the ruins of what was. They've learned to ask about my life without needing something from it. I've learned to share my successes without expecting enthusiasm. They don't know how to give. The house stands as a symbol of everything that happened, the favoritism, the neglect, the financial irresponsibility, but also the redemption, the accountability, and the possibility of change. I own it, but in a way, it owns a piece of all of us. Marcus asked me recently if I regret not just walking away, letting them lose everything and cutting ties completely. Sometimes, in my angriest moments, I think it would have been easier. But easy isn't always right. They're my parents, flawed and frustrating and human. They failed me, but they're trying to do better. That has to count for something. I've learned that family isn't about unconditional support or blind loyalty. It's about choosing to stay connected despite the hurt, setting boundaries that protect your peace, and knowing when to save someone and when to let them save themselves. I saved the house. I saved my parents from homelessness. But in the end, the person I really saved was myself, from the bitter cycle of resentment, from the need for validation I was never going to get, and from the belief that love has to be earned. Love doesn't have to be earned, but respect does. And finally, after 35 years, I have both, not from them, but from myself, and that's more than enough.